We're going to start off with the interfacility traffic area ITA and vicinity plan draft. Dave, you want to do the introduction?
Well, I'm going to let our planning director do the introduction. So, Barry?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon,
We're glad to have
Council.
you, buddy.
It's great to be here. As you may know, the ITA plan, that's the acronym for the Interfacility Transition Area. Traffic area. See, I knew it. I looked at him, and as soon as I looked at him, I knew Interfacility Traffic Area Plan and Vicinity. So, and that has been going on for about almost a year. We started about a year ago. You all funded that in full, and we used the person that did the first ITA plan, which is Paul Ostergaard and UDA. We did that in 2011, and he's going to go into it, but you may wonder why we're redoing a plan again a few years later. Well, the city acquired about 1,500 acres of land at that time, and it's a significant impact on that area. We have had numerous public meetings. We have had about 4 opportunities for the public to come in and talk to us. The most recent one was the 27th of September. We had about 33 people show up. We had a lot of comments. We sent them in your council package, and we will have the Planning Commission will be briefed tomorrow. Similar briefing to, in fact, it's good point, making it the 10th and 11th on that slide. So we'll do that tomorrow morning. The Planning Commission tonight, immediately following this meeting, we'll have another public open house meeting right across the street in Building 19. So if you want to extend your night to more city activities, just walk across the street, and we'll be glad to have you at our meeting. With that, I will. Paul Ostergaard is here to provide the presentation. Right. Thank you.
Paul, we're glad to have you back.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Manager, and the council. It's a pleasure to be back. Thank you, Barry. So I'm going to summarize today our work on the ITA and the vicinity. Our team included our firm Urban Design Associates with 3 Virginia-based firms, WPL, VHB, and the Miles Agency. We, as Barry described, we had a 3-phase process. The first, we began with public meetings on October 13th last year to begin to learn more about the changes that have taken place in the IT area. And then we had a planning charrette in November, and then we've been refining the plan recommendations since then. So what's changed? Why revisit the ITA plan? Well, the city acquired a lot of property here. Previously, there were some market development considerations in the center of the ITA, but now market and economic conditions have changed since we did that plan. City priorities have changed. The major stakeholders in the area have changed, and there are some other new projects planned. And then there's this increased interest in stormwater and flood resiliency in the city. So here's a plan that shows the amount of land that the city has acquired over the years, which is a very wise thing to do for this part of the city because it is such a sensitive part of the city to manage. So this gives you great opportunity for doing a number of things you wouldn't be able to do in other locations. So this is the new ITA as redefined. We actually added the Rock Creek property to the south, which was not in the original study, and we expanded in some other areas. So this is the extent, and most of this land is undeveloped agricultural land or wetlands areas. And most of the development is up in the very north along the Princess Anne Road. So just to orient you, this is Princess Anne Road here. This is the municipal center right here. Your amphitheater is over here, and this is the golf course and the existing sports facility. A lot of things are underway. The expansion of the athletic complex. God bless you. The expansion of the biotech campus along Princess Anne Road. There's development proposals next to the historic district, the Veterans Care Facility, and infrastructure improvements that are underway. If we actually look at this land carefully and subtract out wetlands, environmentally sensitive areas, areas that already have development in place. This is the resulting land area that we actually can work with in terms of planning for the future. So it's really two farms, the Brown and Brenneman Farm, it's the Biotech Medical Park, and then it's a small part of Rock Creek, which is actually land that is not in wetlands that could be used in the North Landing Park area to the south. So the net developable land area then is about 822 acres.
What's the total land mass of that 822?
Of the whole ITA study area, I don't have that number off the top of my head right now, but it's considerably more. I would say it's triple at least the 822 acres.
Okay, double, so triple.
Yep. I'll show you some of the initiative areas and give you some of the acreages for those areas. So this is an illustration of our master plan recommendations, and I'll go into this in more detail. But there's a considerable amount of open space. We're protecting the operational viability of Oceana NAS and Fentress. We're complying with their agreements with the city and the zoning ordinances. There's a great opportunity here to create open space systems and amenities for the citizens of Virginia Beach. We're recommending improvements to road infrastructure and then key facilities that you would not normally be able to locate in a city quite as easily, such as the Municipal Services Campus, Agricultural Research Facility, an environmental research facility for the Albemarle watershed, which this is a part of, and preserving the historic character. So let's first look at the roads and framework strategy. There are some key road improvements that we're recommending that will be further studied by Department of Public Works. They include the one that's already underway, Lansdowne Road extension, also the extension of Nemo Parkway to Lansdowne Road, and then eventually to Salem Road improvements, and then the improvements to Indian River Road. Coming with the road improvements, we have the opportunity to also build trails, as you do in other parts of the city, such as your recent work on Princess Anne Road. So we can build a trail network as well that follows the road corridors, but also one that could go through park environments as well. So that this would be an extensive multi-purpose trail system that could be used by cyclists, by hikers, by all sorts of folks that would be a part of this open space network. We're also going to utilize the best stormwater management techniques that are available today for this area. This is a very sensitive, low-lying part of the city. So we're going to use the existing canals and water, the sort of the topography and the slope of the land to help manage stormwater, to drain it, to clean it, and to release it into the rivers. We have a number of techniques. This will also be a great opportunity to educate people about stormwater management as a part of their outdoor experience. And most importantly, we're increasing the resiliency in this area to storm events and to sea level rise. You also get here in the Albemarle watershed, you get wind-driven tide. So high tide, high winds coming from the south, you can get flooding in this part of the city more easily. So this is an example of knitting all that together, where we have usable open space, we have trails that follow along the water courses, where you can store stormwater and manage it properly, so that this can really become a wonderful outdoor experience, this area, for the citizens of Virginia Beach. So for the initiative areas, we sort of move from development in the north to open space preservation in the south. Think of it that way. In the north, where the utilities are located, where there's access to roads, the biotech park, the expansion of the sports center, the new municipal services campus. And then as we move further south, preserving open space where there's a lot of wetlands currently, preserving farmland for agricultural research, and then creating a new park that focuses on environmental research for this part of Virginia and North Carolina and that entire watershed. So for the Biotech Park and Sports Center plan, the expansion of the Biotech Park, which is a very important economic development opportunity for the city, expanding your recreational field so that this will be a truly remarkable recreational facility on the East Coast. It's already, it's getting there. Your field hockey facility is amazing in my view, and you can just build on that success. And then in areas where there's a lot of wetlands and where it's harder to develop, we would preserve these areas as outdoor open space, introduce trails, new stormwater facilities. We'd preserve wildlife habitats, increase the tree, shrub, and plant life, and so on for this particular area. Maybe even introduce water sports into this area. And then we would create a city municipal services campus. And this is taking the SIPSA transfer station, which is currently located at Rosemont Road and Concert Drive. That's become an increasingly valuable area in terms of development opportunity. Move that operation down here to a large site. This is here we go. I have it's 288 acres that we've set aside for this facility. About 167 of it would be usable for public works operations and maintenance, public utility operations and maintenance, and then citizen waste and recycling drop-off and composting. This is not stinky garbage. This is not household waste. This isn't creating a new landfill for the city. This is sorting through materials that come in and processing them. So it's very different from some of the large Mount Trashmores in the area. Then there's an agricultural research facility that we envision for this area that focused around education. Education for young farmers, education for farm owners, for people interested in getting into the agriculture, perhaps collaborating with universities, programs, and other research folk working on such ideas as crop experimentation, nursery stock, high-value crops for farms in this area, which is, you're not a big Midwestern farm here. These tend to be smaller farms close to urban centers. So what can farmers take advantage of with their location and their skills to improve their economic viability over time? You could look at test kitchens and all sorts of farm-to-table kinds of opportunities as well. So we could imagine a facility growing here. This could become a marvelous agricultural research facility. For North Landing Park, this is a great opportunity to create an environmental mecca. In a sense, you could come here and camp close to the river. You could, there would be picnic areas, kayak launch points, all sorts of trails down here. But we see also the focus of this could be the Albemarle Conservation Center. And I understand there's been some activity regarding this, a lot of interest regarding this possibility that would be, I would love to see further developed, because it's a very exciting idea. And we did just a conceptual rendering showing perhaps a new conservation center related to the North Landing River. Then these are the recommendations from the original ITA study in 2010 still apply to the municipal center, where over time you could begin to think of the municipal center as more of a mixed-use district, not just office space, but perhaps you could introduce other uses such as residential that could be integrated into this street grid that and block structure that you've created, so that it becomes more like a, more than just an 8-hour a day kind of place. It could be more around the clock. Maybe restaurants and other commercial space as well could be integrated into here. This is one of the few spots in this entire study area where you can actually introduce residential. It's outside of the ACU's restriction area. So that's one of the reasons why we're kind of interested in looking at this possibility here. And then historic Princess Anne Center is at the intersection of Princess Anne Road and North Landing Road. It's always been a commercial center going back a century or more. It was an ag center. So it has a lot of history behind it. Across the street is your historic courthouse. And so we encouraged building more commercial uses here that would be convenience for the people who work in the municipal center and the people who live in the surrounding neighborhoods, making this into a little village commercial district. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about Courthouse East. This was a study that came later in our process, but it's a critical area of land. It's right next to what I just showed you, the Princess Anne Historic Center. In fact, it's part of it. It's that orange area on the map on the right. This orange area is actually located in what's known as the transition area of Virginia Beach. The transition area is an area between the agricultural rural part of the city and the urbanized part of the city. And there's a big report and a lot of work done on defining the land use and the characteristics and approaches to development in the transition in the area in the future, which is basically to restrict development, to preserve open space, preserve wetlands, and create this transitional area between the two environments. It's also south of the famous green line, which is your urban service, you could call it an urban service boundary. It's between the urban part of the city, it defines the urban part of the city and the agricultural part of the city to the south. So some of our study area is located south of Princess Anne Road in that transition area. And then some of the parcels on the north side of Princess Anne Road are outside of the transition area in the urbanized area. Both are impacted by ACUs. So we had a lot to work with here when we were working on this. It's also a very low-lying area close to sea level for much of this study area. So this is an illustration showing a potential redevelopment of this land, which are right now some large single-family lots, introducing more housing in this area, but much of the land that you see to the right remains open space, wetlands, undeveloped. If you follow the rules of the zoning ordinance and the transition area guidelines, the developer here would have the ability to build 53 units of housing, 53 single-family houses. But if you also follow the transition's recommended guideline for a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet, that actually reduces the amount of lots you can put in here down to about 35 lots, because the buildable area will only support about 35 lots of about 15,000 square feet each. The transition area also says that there are two areas in the transition zone that are recommended to be nodes or clusters of more intense development. One is in Pungo, and the other is right here at Courthouse East. So we looked at the idea of allowing whoever develops this to build to 53 lots, which is permitted, but to reduce the lot sizes in order to create a more intimate, walkable neighborhood that would feel more like a hamlet, almost like a historic settlement. It has many advantages here in this location, because these houses would be within easy walking distance of the municipal center, of the commercial properties at the intersection of Princess Anne Road and North Landing Road. They would be next to open space that's usable and recreational areas. And so we are encouraging the idea that you consider 53 lots permitted here in a hamlet format. And this is an image of what that could look like. Intimate streets. We've integrated stormwater management techniques into the design of the streetscapes, thanks to Billy's firm, WPL, did a great job with that. And this shows houses on small lots in this unique hamlet environment. The Village Retail Center could be 1 or 2 story, maybe 3-story buildings that would have ground floor shops and restaurants, maybe some residential units upstairs possibly. But this is an image of what that intersection could look like with a little town square. This is an existing building, the existing former general store, and then some new buildings that would wrap around a public space. And you could build restaurants or other community amenities. And then across Princess Anne Road to the north, we illustrated the Kellum property, illustrating the idea that part of this property could be utilized for more housing. And so we illustrate a concept of building houses around a shared lawn or shared green. The historic house itself could be maintained as a residence or perhaps used as a bed and breakfast or some sort of other use that would comply with the zoning regulations. What we want to do is protect this view of the front of this house and the view of all of the houses along Princess Anne Road. So we regard the view shed of Princess Anne Road as very important to preserve because it preserves the original character of the district. And so we've sort of set some guidelines for protecting the lawns and the trees and the landscape along there. So that's a summary of the ITA plan and our work in Courthouse East. Several different opportunities that are totally unique that would be very difficult to achieve elsewhere in the city because of the interesting land use restrictions and so on that are there right now, and the fact that the city's acquired all this property and has some great opportunities ahead of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments?
One comment, one question. I know the slides aren't numbered, but the City Municipal Services Campus, it's this slide.
Yes, sir.
This is just a comment on the Sipser Transfer Station. Have no issue with that, but the user base as a fee shouldn't be asked to bear the capital cost of that relocation. That should be a general fund expense and then transferred to the fund. Gotcha. I think it's for the benefit not of the users, but of the city as a whole. That's just an observation.
Check.
And is this, and I like this idea about the agricultural research thing, but is this a place marker of trying to get Virginia Tech to relocate from the land that they have to this location and have a land swap? Is that the thought process here?
The thought process, I think, was that, you know, we've got this large agricultural area, and in order to keep that in agriculture, and also to help the agricultural industry that's in Virginia Beach prepare for the future. Make sure, you know, while we're buying development rights and so forth, that we've got an agricultural industry that's going to be able to support people. We really need to be on the cutting edge with research about changing agricultural practices and so forth, which maybe we're not keeping up with quite as we should. And to utilize those farmlands, which are good farmland, in a fashion that, you know, works on this whole idea of research. However it's done,
I just might suggest that might be something we might want to investigate, since that's an issue I know we've dealt with. There might be a common ground there, Mr. Mayor.
And I just love that thought.
we will hold possible calls.
Absolutely.
But, you know, I know that things sometimes
I can facilitate.
sometimes things get a little political when you're working with the state and that kind of thing. But, you know, there are other avenues for research.
Because it appears I don't have any. Shannon?
My turn. I just have a question on the same slide that John pointed out, the Municipal Service Campus. I know we have curbside recycling and garbage pickup in most of the city, and apartments and multifamily have the option of a private provider to do their recycling and garbage. How much do we see the citizen waste and recycling drop-off being utilized, and is it really a necessity?
Mr. Hanson, I think
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that. One of the most important things that we do is we've expanded our hazardous materials collection area at both the SIPSA transfer stations that we have as well as at our landfill. It's critically important that we provide opportunities for our citizens to efficiently and without a lot of hassle get there and be able to drop off things to have that recycle. With the bin structure, if you've been to the landfill and you've ever dropped anything off, it's the most efficient organization that I've ever seen, and they do it quite well. And I would say that opening up an opportunity to get more debris and more things put in the right place, it's really not a difficult thing to do. We'd be picking up processes, and then we'd be transporting larger container vehicles, trucks to the landfill so that citizens would have easier access to do that.
I mean, is it used a lot? I mean, I stick mine in the blue can every 2 weeks and you take it away and I don't have to worry about it.
Well, it is quite a bit. If you go to landfill, you'll see people driving in with a pickup truck and they got old beds and box springs and metal recycle and it goes in a metal bin, or they got wood and it goes in the wood bin, or cardboard in the cardboard bin. People are really actively engaged in keeping their neighborhoods clean, and code enforcement helps them do that. So it's a good place for them to go.
Other questions or comments, Barbara?
I'm going to pass around this slide, part of a slide that was in a presentation Tom Lee made at the Ag Advisory Commission last night. And what this is the 4 primary watersheds of Virginia Beach, which of course, you know, we've got the Stewberry study going on. But the thing that really is impressive is how large the southern watersheds area is. And, you know, I know we spend an awful lot of time talking about the Chesapeake, which is certainly important. But look at how much of the city is in the southern watersheds, and all of this drains to Albemarle. And when we were having the initial discussions about the ITA last fall, you know, this whole idea of our increased attention to stormwater, this was right after Matthew last year, and, you know, everybody is so much more aware of stormwater and flooding issues and so forth. And in looking at this particular area, you know, that this idea or this realization that, you know, hey, Virginia Beach is positioned at the headwaters of the Albemarle. You know, we're at the foot of the Chesapeake, but we're at the headwaters of the Albemarle. And when we're working with this area, particularly given the fact that we've got this wind tide situation, we really need to be connected with the folks south of us, because our water is their water and their water is our water, because this water keeps going up and back, depending on which way the wind is blowing. And this whole connection with the south is one that I think we really need to try to cultivate. And this idea of, you know, we've got this wonderful facility at Brock, which is the basis for the Chesapeake, and we've got the aquarium, which is our oceanfront connection. We really could do wonders if we had this facility here for bringing together all of the folks who do research and who have to manage and work with the Albemarle. And so that was sort of the genesis of this idea for using this Rock Church property, which is, you know, right on the North Landing River, and as you know, perhaps a location for something that could bring together the folks who are trying to deal with the Albemarle. And, you know, we have reached out to see if there was interest, and we have found out that there is interest. Certainly nobody's volunteering to go out and build a facility yet, but certainly some interest in working together and exchanging information and so forth. And so I just wanted you to know, you know, a little bit more about that. But I think the fact that we have found interest is very encouraging and could be great. I hope we can eventually find some interest for the agricultural research, but we can work on that a little bit more. But of course, you look at the biomedical and look at what our city has done with the biomedical in a short, 3 years or so, that concept has come forward, and it's really done great things. You know, we talked about R&D for the city over the years, and, you know, it looks like we really really could do some things. And I think this particular area of the city, with it being low, with it being, you know, when you look at the map and you see all of the waterways that are throughout this area, and how sensitive they are. Of course, looking at this southern watersheds area, you know, we're low and we're flat, and you know it's quite an area that we're going to have to work with. And I think this gives us an opportunity, and this whole ITA can sort of be like the outdoor laboratory for us to work with these stormwater issues that we're going to have to work with in the southern watersheds. And now that we're doing the sea level rise study, and everything I keep hearing is that, boy, is the southern watersheds really going to be impacted. We've got a lot of opportunity here to take this area and to help us understand all of this and work with it in such a fashion. And I think they're portraying all of this in the way they have integrated the natural area with the possibilities of use. Really a good opportunity for us. You know, we can do a lot of things here that maybe we, as you said, can't do anyplace else, that can help us a lot in other things. And with the what do we call it, municipal services area, I know there was a little concern at first from some of the neighbors, but I haven't heard so much. Might hear it tonight, but I think you've got it very buffered, and of course by bringing Lansdowne Road down that area, it would give access to the city's trucks from all over the city to come in there and not really heavily impact an existing area too much, because you've positioned this in an area that can be very buffered. And it would be essentially mulching, I guess, that we'll be doing there with stormwater debris, storm debris, when we get all those trees and everything down, and you have to have a big place to haul all that stuff and maintain it. So it will give us that area as well. So we can work with this, I think, to make certain that it's not an adverse thing to the area that it's going to move into. And so I think they've done a great job in dealing with all these things. And you know, we're still looking at this Courthouse East, but I think in the southern watersheds, we are doing all of these studies. You know, the other work that we're doing with stormwater and looking at all of the drainage basins and the modeling that's being done. We really are going to have to be extremely careful with this area, because it's very sensitive to all of these flooding issues that we're hearing about, and drainage, and but it can also sort of be the outdoor laboratory for all of this if we do it right on the property that we have designated. So I'm really encouraged by the work, and I hope you all are too.
Very good. Any other comments? I'd just like to reinforce a couple of things that Barbara hit on. I do believe at the Princess Anne, at the Rock Church property, that you could have another Brock Center there. And I think that's something that's very doable. I think maybe partnering with, you know, we've been reaching out to Virginia Wesleyan. Barbara's been working with them. I could just see a lot of good things happening there. You know, Barbara, I would sit back and say to you that we've got, as far as the agricultural thing, I think the agricultural community's got to step up and say what they need help from, and then we got to go to Virginia Tech and see if they're going to participate or not. You know, I think we had deaf ears the last time we went, and I think we need to have a formal request from, you know, the agricultural community, and if they're going to be our partner, fine. If they're not, they're not. I don't know if that makes sense to you or not, but let's get it off dead center, because that's a perfect area to do it. Find another one if they're not.
Right, there's one way to skin a cat.
All right, any other comments? She's getting feisty over here. All right. Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a
I
great
know I
briefing.
shouldn't have said it
I
either.
appreciate it.
I'm over it. I am right. I am right. You know, every now and then I'm right. I'm right on this one. Okay, Ron, we're glad to have you. Sports Center Public Private Education Facilities Infrastructure Act, PPEA, presented by Ronald H. Williams, Jr., Deputy City Manager.
Yes, sir. Mayor, members of council. As you recall, this past summer, we received 3 unsolicited proposals for our sports center next to the convention center. And we requested from you, permission to move forward with the solicitation. We did that in August. And on September 26th, we have received 3 responses to the solicitation. This is a directional brief. We'll be making recommendations on behalf of administration and asking for your consensus on moving forward with these recommendations. The 3 teams, to familiarize yourself with them, ESM team, Eastern Sports Management, is currently the operator of the Virginia Beach Field House. They're out of Fredericksburg. Their general contractor, Wack, the brother of John Wack with ESM, also out of Fredericksburg. And then their civil and architectural teams, VHB and Price Simpson Harvey, were respondents. MEB, Middle Eastern Builder, general contractors out of Chesapeake, had teamed up with an operator, American Sports Centers, which runs the Anaheim sports facility and a couple other facilities. They've also brought on Phase 5 Performance, which is a local young team from Virginia Beach. And then their civil and architecture and engineering, Clark Nexon and Hanbury, have teamed up on that. You may recall, if you didn't know, that recently the principal of Hanbury came from Clark Nexon, David Keith. So they have a relationship with the firms on that. And then locally, SB Ballard has teamed up with Sports Facility Advisor, SFA, SFM, Sports Facility Management. They're out of Cleveland. They run several facilities in the Mid-Atlantic and across the U.S. and also provide consulting services for this industry. And they have teamed up with AECOM, who has been the designer engineer for a significant number of similar facilities across the United States. So a little bit about the process. The PPEA process, of course, is a procurement method. It gives us flexibility to combine which our target was here, which is to design, build, and operate a facility here in Virginia Beach. All 3 submittals exhibited competence and experience in design and construction of similar facilities across the United States. And typically during this conceptual phase, we might be in a scenario where we were shortlisting because you had maybe a half dozen submittals. We have 3, and we have 3 very competent, experienced teams. And because we had no more than 3, and they are high quality conceptual proposals, we're going to make some recommendations. Number 1 is that there's a term in the PPEA Act where you actually accept, and Mr. Attorney can elaborate on that, but we would recommend that we actually accept these proposals because they are qualified submittals, and they are meeting the scope and the facility requirements that we put into the RFQ. By accepting them, we then would post them for public review of anything that is not confidential and proprietary, which the city attorney would make that determination after our acceptance. What this really does is enable us to get into the detailed phase where we can actually get more granular information on the design, construction, and the operation performance, so that we can do an apples and apples comparison with the team to try to make a selection for a recommendation for the design, build, and operation of the facility. If we were to do that, we would put out a request to the 3 proposers that submitted during the conceptual phase. We believe we can do that as soon as October 16th. And in that, we'll have a little more definition than we had in the RFQ. For example, a minimum usable square footage of the floor space. Also, a template for the operations 20-year pro forma, things of that nature. We would put that out for 30 days, ask that they be due November 15th, and then we would start interviews with the teams in the first week of December with the goal of selecting a preferred team to start to negotiate an interim agreement during December. If we're moving forward with that, then we also, parallel to this, would be developing the terms of an interim agreement. The interim agreement gives us the ability to select the preferred developer, builder, operator team. We can do design during that. We can do other things such as preliminary site work. And the goal there would be to try to make sure that we get a design, we do public engagement, design that's workable, and get a guaranteed maximum price well within the budget that is planned in the CIP. Typically, we do 30% design on this, and then what we do is the typical public-private PPEA or PPTA scenarios is that the developer is accepting some risk, and that's the value proposition that's in this type of process, to accept some risk to give us a guaranteed maximum price at the 30% design. It's different than a classic design, bid, build scenario. We would then work towards a comprehensive agreement based on that estimated cost and guaranteed maximum price, in a comprehensive agreement that could be developed later in the summer. I want to share with you that we're going to task a work order for MVP out of the peninsula. They're a firm that many of us have used for similar processes before. They help us to mitigate the risk and optimize the value of this process with the facility that we would like to obtain. They can assist our review team, which Taylor Adams and Dana Harmeyer are in here, of course. I forgot to mention at the outset. They can assist us with comparing and contrasting and reviewing all the proposals, give us apple-apple comparisons, making sure that we understand the construction techniques, the products that are in there. And then they'll give us a final report that we use as the basis for negotiating interim and comprehensive agreements. So if council, we do have consensus and support for you for moving forward into the detailed phase, essentially that would take us into November with starting to receive and evaluate the next round of proposals from these 3 submitters. With the idea of trying to get a selection of a preferred proposer in December, and then start to negotiate the terms of the interim agreement. When we do the terms of interim agreement, that has to be posted, Dana, for 30 days, I believe, and we have to have a public hearing on that, and then we can get them underway with a notice to proceed for the interim agreement, again, with the goal of a comprehensive agreement by the end of the fiscal year, so that it aligned with the planned appropriations of the CIP.
Very good. Questions or comments?
I do.
Yes, sir.
I've done a lot of big procurements, and one of the things I have found out is there is no acceptance of risk by people. They up their price to make sure that you pay for the risk you're asking to accept. So I think that there's no evidence in the academic journals that accept that people did.
I think that's what I would do.
Exactly. So I meant was the idea that they're accepting risk? No, they're just passing the cost on the 30% design. What I have seen in the literature, generally you want to get somewhere between 60 and 70% of design to really ensure that you're getting a better accountable bid and controlling the cost and not paying too much for premium. So I don't know where you came with the 30% thing, but I'd like to understand the trade space and where the academic literature or business literature kind of suggests that's the sweet spot. I don't think that's the right sweet spot, so that's just a question on the basic methodology of 30%, because I think you're going to pay, but maybe you can't get the bidders to incur that cost, but I think it's not correct that they're assuming that cost. They are passing that cost on to us in those bids.
It's common with PPAs in Virginia at 30%. Some have been done, most PPAs have not been done at 50%. However, I have done it. It perhaps saves on either the negotiated allowances that are on the developer's side of the ledger or our side. Yes, sir. Just
sharing that because that's been
But it's common in Virginia.
Yeah, well, sometimes best practice is what that one guy said, best practice in that 0-1 game, that's Peter Thurl. Best practice means that's the mediocre. You want to be better than best practice because above average is where the real competition is. So I assume that's true, but I think you at least need to take a critical look at that. And before this comes back, so I asked the city attorney about today, provide direction, we really need to know who the real principals are so that before we make decisions, we can make sure we don't have a conflict of interest. And we don't have that kind of information at this point, but the city manager says at this stage the city attorney, we don't need that, but we will need that near the end. So we'll know who
Agreed.
All those people are, and we can decide whether or not we can vote or not.
One of the things that happens, and Ron mentioned it, once we get direction to go to final, we post the confidential portions of their submittals, and in that confidential has the principal list associated with that. So those will be revealed as soon as we move out of this. into the detailed. We just can't let go the
Well, I understand all
particulars
that,
of each of
so I
theirs.
can assume that before
Yes,
we
sir.
leave today, that we can have a copy of that?
We don't have them Xerox, but how about Friday's packet? Is that fair?
I'll found a reasonable
Okay.
person.
Yeah, we can duplicate that.
Yes,
And
we,
will, when you come back,
The
will
principles, the principles.
well, as it relates to the principles, I believe those are, that is in phase one, and we'll move to it immediately upon giving the firms notification they've been accepted. We're posting these to the website anyway. They're electronic ready to go, so we can have them for Friday for sure.
So if we don't give them to you, we give you a link.
that works.
All right.
Electronic stuff works. And just one last comment, if I could, Mr. Mayor. Last comment is, when the things come back, will we see the criteria and the scoring by which the committee used?
Yes, sir.
And will we get also who the committee was?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
In executive session.
That's fine, I just want to know.
Yes, sir.
Yes, absolutely.
Other questions or comments? Barbara?
In remembering the discussion that we had a couple months ago about this, I think we were at this point of looking at what was going to be built there and the parking garages that would be necessary and so forth. And I think we said, well, at that time, we thought that by the time we got this report, we would have a definitive answer on the arena. And so we said, well, we were not going to talk about all of that, about the parking garages and all, because we need to know about the arena. But we don't know right now about the arena. And so I'm conflicted about saying, at what point are we agreeing that that we're going to do this? Because to me, I think we have to look at everything. Looking at these projects independently, I don't think is the way we need to do it. I think we need to look at it all
I think I would agree with you.
together. And for my own position, I like this, but I really don't care for the arena one bit. But if we're going to do the arena, I don't see how we can do this too. And it puts me in an awkward position. Could you, and I know folks who know how to do these things can do this fairly simply, could we have a rendering of what all of this area is going to look like if all of these things are built? I mean, we're looking at the arena, we're looking at this field house, we're looking at a parking garage or two, and we're looking at the dome site. Now, if all of this is built, what's it going to look like? Can we have a rendering?
Yes, ma'am, we have that.
And
So,
could we include the 3 hotels, the Ferris wheel, and the Pier
Oh, yeah.
2?
Well, give it all.
The what?
yes, sure.
Ferris wheel,
Okay,
location pier.
are you talking about the pier project?
Correct.
That's not in the same,
No, but it all represents debt structure, all represents demands on city revenues, so it is part of the comprehensive look of what you can afford.
I think that part, the funding, yes, but I mean, I was just wanting to look at, I'm feeling like we're overwhelming this area, and I want to know what it looks like.
yes, ma'am, we can do that, but in answer to your question, we're still in this PPA, trying to get to some fidelity on whether or not, and without giving away anything that I'm not allowed to give away, what Ron's telling you is, we didn't get 7 or 8, we got 3. 3 are all competent, they've all done this kind of work, they all have great operators, they have good builders, and they kind of gave us a spread. We're gonna use a pro to come in that's independent, it's gonna help us with the technical evaluation as they get into the detailed. By the time we get that detail back in that timeline that Ron's talking about in November, we know that the deadline for the arena is 6 November. So before I have to tell you what I need for parking here, we'll know whether the arena's there. And so as soon as that comes about, we'll be able to come in and say, here's what the project is to support that, or we don't need that project. We have surface lot, we have plenty of opportunity, and we can move forward in this direction without a cost associated with that. So, but we do have a rendering. But the rendering we have, I think we've got to get permission to release it. If we have a site plan view.
We have a bird's eye that we have in staff. Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, so we'll work that rendering. We've seen the confidential documents of how that looks and some of the things that are there. We're happy to show you that independent of public scrutiny, if you know what I'm trying to tell you here as a confidential. But yeah, we can help you out.
Any other questions or comments?
Just a little granular from Ms. Henley.
At what point do we get to the point that says, oh, well, we have caused these people to go through so much, we can't tell them no that we're not going to have a project now?
That's what I was going to
When are we saying that we're going to have this project?
So
That happens periodically.
The interim agreement, Ms. Henley, that we're suggesting could be adopted in February. That's the first point where you're spending real money for some design in an interim agreement. And that's what we have that's actually appropriate at this time, the capacity to do that. The interim agreement then is to be developing terms of the comprehensive agreement. And so the final say that you would actually be doing a contract, a development agreement with a team would be at the comprehensive agreement level.
Still, people are spending a lot of money.
Other questions or comments?
We'll be back to you with regards to parking and what's real and what's not real by, I would say, we can have an open discussion the second meeting probably in November, and we can have a close executive session the third meeting in November that'll lay all this out. And I think the dollars and the experience will all become apparent.
John Earn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know it was real important to a lot of members on the council here that we actually partner with a private sector company to do the design, build, and operation of this. And the fact that we actually got 3 really strong proposals, it means something to me. And I'm hopefully we're going to be able to follow this process and have a better product for it.
Yes, sir.
I know it would be unusual, but can we just advertise for an executive session for the 2nd November after the 6 o'clock meeting, and rather than waiting another thing to have that discussion on that second Tuesday in November, so we're not jamming up against Thanksgiving? It's just a thought if no one else says yes, but it's an option that we have.
Well, we'll see what we can do on that.
I'll leave that to your discretion.
Other questions or comments? I got one question, and John, help me with this. I thought that there was concern about controlling the use of this facility.
That will be part of this here where we get a booking agreement.
Okay, right.
That's in
It
there.
looks like discussions that we're going to be able to come up with something that's not only going to allow us to do what the facility was intended for in terms of booking those types of conferences and other stuff, but also,
Hey, you're on top of it.
but also
Forget
allow
it.
better utilization.
I'm there.
in the-
Got
in
it.
the near
Thank you
term.
very much. Appreciate it. All right, thank you very much, Ron. Human Services 3-year strategic plan. Dr. Donald Kirkland, Deputy Director, Continuous Quality Improvement.
Yes. As folks are coming in, what you've got, and I don't know, is Danette joining us today? Yes, sir. Okay, great. I'm going to let the director step to the podium right out the gate. Danette, if you just grab the podium and do an intro. We're continuing to make great progress in human services as they tackle some of the more important aspects of providing services to our community. And Danette's going to do the intro, and then we're going to turn it loose with the doc.
Danette, we're glad to have you.
Oh, thank you so much, City Manager and City Council. Thank you so much for your attention today, listening to our strategic plan. And our leader for today is going to be Dr. Donald Kirkland.
We welcome you, Doc.
Thank you.
Nice to have you, sir.
Good afternoon, City Mayor, City Council, City Manager. We're here, a very exciting time to present the department's, an overview of the strategic plan for the department. Today I have some great stakeholders with me. I have Elizabeth Batista Boone. She's the Social Services, Adult and Employment Services Division Administrator. I have Donna Morris. She's part of the Social Services Advisory Board. Teresa Stanley, Interfaith Alliance. Al Stewart, Social Services Child Welfare Community Child Welfare Administrator, sorry about that. And me, I'm the Continuous Quality Improvement Deputy Director.
We welcome everyone. Glad to have everyone.
Okay, so we started this plan back in May of 2016 with the intent of creating a roadmap that would guide our path forward. And that's the key. You'll see that throughout our plan, Path Forward. So for this process, we developed a 37-member steering committee to guide the planning process. This is really great. We had a lot of people that wanted to be part of the steering committee, including behavioral health community services, and social service advisory boards. We had Virginia Beach Schools, Police, Department of Corrections, Department of Public Health, Virginia Department of Social Services, and many multicultural and faith-based service delivery providers throughout the city. So we had a lot of great involvement in the steering committee. So with the steering committee's help in identifying stakeholders, the department conducted 15 focus groups with over 250 participants that included seniors, advocacy groups, the business community, citizens, consumers, clients, schools, again, government agencies, the faith community, service providers. You can see a lot, staff, and many others. As a result of the information that we learned in the focus groups and the guidance from the steering committee, we identified many themes related to integrating service delivery, providing access to services, engaging and communicating with the community, obtaining, retaining, and developing staff. So from these themes, we developed 4 pillars that will guide the department's work, and again, moving forward towards a premier human services department. So those pillars are the pillar of potential, which focuses on service integration, the pillar of progress, which focuses on access to services, the pillar of promise, which focuses on communication and community engagement, and finally, the pillar of enhancement, which focuses on talent acquisition and development. So we're going to ask each of the stakeholders that are part of the team that came with us today to come and talk about each of those pillars. The first person up is going to be Ms. Elizabeth Batista Boone.
We welcome you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, and good afternoon, everyone. I am excited and privileged to be able to present to you the first pillar, the pillar of potential. And I will tell you that I had to think about potential and truly just defining it. It's becoming. It's something we can become. As a department, we are a large department. And what I'd like to share with you is we have 63 programs in human services. We have 1,550 staff members in our Human Services Department. We also have 31 facilities. So one of the very first things that we thought of in looking at this pillar of potential, of course, focusing on service integration, is how can we possibly look at such a large department and be able to connect resources, share with each other. So we're looking at the internal, the infrastructure of our department. And what we'd like to do, of course, is create joint efforts between human services departments, divisions, and units. We are so large, and how can we do that? The thought is to identify a liaison for each one of our program areas that can be the subject matter expert, perhaps, for that program area. What I've learned as a senior leader of the department is that I have still a lot to learn about different department areas. I have been with the department for 19 years. And I will tell you, January 1999, when I first started with the department, to today, I will say that I still don't know everything about our department. So to create this, this liaison, create this liaison point of contact will be great for our department. Also, with service integration, we do have to have a way of being able to be out in the community. We have many staff that are outreach staff members that are in the community, whether they're in courts or whether they're in other organizations or places throughout the community. And what we need to create is a way that they will have, our staff will have mobile technology. With that mobile technology, we will have the ability to have real-time documentation. We will have the ability to decrease travel time. We will also be able to maximize worker productivity. And quite honestly, our staff that are out in the community really need to have these laptops and these, just tablets so that they can do the work faster, real-time documentation. So we are looking at moving in that direction. We also want to, and that's the infrastructure, just the internal. We want to look at the external as well. How can this impact us externally? We currently have many, many partners. We're looking at maintaining the partnerships that we have with our community, whether it's nonprofit, faith-based, all other organizations, but we also need to expand our connections and our partnerships with community members. What we know is that we need to streamline services. We offer a lot in human services, but so do all of the other organizations in our community. We want to make sure that we know what the resources are in our community, so we want to be able to create a partnership, network partnership, so that by the end of the 3 years of our strategic plan, we have some actual results and some outcomes. And what we're looking at for results and outcomes, what we're expecting for all of you to see and for us to accomplish will be faster response times for services to our clients. We want to build what I mentioned, which is a community partnership network. And we want to be sure that there is no wrong door. And with that no wrong door, I would love to introduce to you Donna Morris, who will be presenting the next pillar, and she will begin by sharing with you about access to services. No wrong door. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Donna. We're glad to have you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Mayor Sessoms, members of the City Council. First of all, I want to thank you for appointing me to the Social Services Advisory Board. And then prior to that, I was on the Community Services Board from 2003 to 2011. So actually in 15 years, I've seen a lot of change in the city and absolutely in the department. I really did enjoy being a part of the steering committee for the development of the strategic plan. One of the takeaways for me was the purposeful outreach to groups well beyond the department, the clients that we serve, our service providers. You know, there's a lot of value in capturing the perceptions and the realities about the department itself. And you can get that from businesses, from culturally diverse groups, from faith-based community, from neighborhood associations. Their feedback really helped us build the foundation necessary to support the pillars of this plan. Access to service is a critical piece. It ensures that the department is truly meeting the needs of Virginia Beach citizens. Within this pillar, the department has the following goals, which you see on the screen. First, to ensure existing service locations are suitable for continued utilization. You know, it's pretty important that you start with the facilities you have in place. You know, sometimes things that we did just a few years ago quickly outdate. So it's important to see what we have, where they are, the services that are provided there to see if they're still meeting the need. We also want to expand current service offerings through leveraging the partnerships with other city departments to provide resources and information in their facilities. The city has lots of facilities that are managed by different departments. We need to see if there is an opportunity for us to provide information in some of those locations that will give access, again, to our citizens of what's available in the department. And also something else. You know, I think about the city, I think about the departments. Collectively, we're all trying to achieve the same goal, and that's to better serve the citizens of this city. We'll learn a lot, I think, by the relationship that we have with the other city departments. Maybe some best practices in outreach or in whatever that might help us improve in our own department. So that's just a little add-on there. We want to develop a user-friendly portal and any other innovative outreach strategy that's going to help us get the word out as far as what we have to offer our citizens. And then last but not least, decrease the language and cultural barriers to accessing services. We really must ensure that the residents from all backgrounds and cultures understand the services available to them and feel respected throughout their entire time connecting with this department. So each goal is essential to ensure that we meet the needs of a growing and diverse community. As you know, Virginia Beach has grown and changed significantly over the years, and so have the needs of our most vulnerable citizens. So as a community's needs change, the the service model needs to change too. I look forward to working with this incredible team, with the department, as they work collectively with other community partners to improve access to the services across the greatest city in the world.
You got it. Donna, you're my cheerleader.
Now I would like to introduce Teresa Stanley, who is going to present the next great pillar of this plan.
Teresa, we're glad to have you. Thank you, Donna.
To be here, Mayor, City Council, City Manager. As you know, I'm Teresa Stanley, and I represent the Interfaith Alliance at the Beach, which is a more than 20-year partner with the Human Services Department. And we've contributed to programs like Bank On, Match Savings, successful advocacy efforts for the citizens of our city, and providing supplemental support for all those that are in need of gap services that Human Services doesn't meet those needs of. So we're a proud partner. And I want to begin by saying I really commend Danette and the whole steering committee for really the intentionality about reaching into the community with these 15 focus groups. We made sure that it was as diverse as we could possibly get, and it's people like me that serve on things like the Human Rights Commission, the Interfaith Alliance at the Beach, many other various faith-based community organizations, to include the Human Rights Commission. So I feel like I was honored to serve, and it was really good to be a part of helping to make sure that we didn't forget about anybody as we tried to get the voice of the people. The voice of the people is what we needed to hear because they know best how they want to be served by their Human Services Department. So this input has created the strategic plan that will now be called a path forward in human services. So I'm very much looking forward to being a part of this team as we work with the community to engage all of our citizens in responsibly meeting the needs of all our citizens. I want to focus on the pillar of communication and community engagement. As a result of this strategic planning process, internal and external communication strategies were identified as areas for improvement over the next 3-year period. Most notably, our citizens and organizations need to understand eligibility requirements, availability of services, and the changes in the programs that are coming down the pike in order to effectively recruit and help assist our neighbors to access the services. In order to do this, HSSD must communicate regularly with all the stakeholders, both those of us in partner organizations and the individual clients. With the increasing use of technology, which is a part of the plan, and new forms of communication, the department must look at innovative, timely, and culturally relevant ways to connect with all of us in the community to ensure that we're aware of the programs and all of the services that the department offers. Development of a partnership network to align these strategies and service priorities and developing innovative outreach opportunities will go a long way toward improving service delivery for our most vulnerable citizens. And this is probably the most important thing I need to say. Any perceived wall between the Human Services Department and the community must come down. We've got to be in this together. Civic engagement is going to be essential if we hope to harness and harvest the creative energy of all of us that are willing to partner to address the myriad of needs of those in our community. So by equipping us with the knowledge of these HSD programs and services, we'll be able to be better advocates and provide services to everyone in our community, helping people to get connected to those services and ensuring that our Human Services Department in the greatest city in the world is capable of meeting the needs of our residents moving into the future. I want to thank all of you for just the incredible collaboration, and I'll introduce you to the last pillar communicator, which is Al Stewart, who will be talking about talent acquisition and development.
Thank you, Teresa. Al, we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Al Stewart, and I am the Child Welfare Administrator. Part of the programs that I have that are under my portfolio are Child Protective Services, foster care and adoptions, prevention programs, ongoing CPS, and our resource development. And I've been with the City of Virginia Beach roughly about 14 months now, so I'm very honored to serve in that role. I am here to present the pillar of enhancement. And I want to just kind of talk a little bit about a national and a local perspective on the pillar of enhancement. Like Ms. Stanley was saying, adults and children and families that are vulnerable are in need of help to reach their full potential. And when we talk about enhancement, it's about our citizens, our programs reaching full potential. The better we are, the more everyone in our city reaches their full potential. That's what we want. Nationally and locally, we have to work towards advocating for those families, adults and children, but we also need to make sure resources are available for them. We must also be committed towards working towards a shared goal of advancing fundamental rights of vulnerable adults, children, and families to make sure that they are free from abuse, neglect, and exploitation. So within that context, the pillar of enhancement really builds on what my colleagues were saying. This enhancement builds on the fact that the Department of Human Services can't do this work alone. It takes a community, it's going to take a whole village to make these things come to fruition. So one of the major areas in the pillar of enhancement is the development and implementation of strategies to support continuing education and training for all staff. This is very big because, like I said, we have a department of over 1,500 employees. Our retention rates have to be improved, and we have to be able to attract and retain the best talented persons that we can get for these positions. And that's very important. As folks come in, we have to be able to develop them. They have to reach their personal development goals, and the more that they can do that, the better they serve our citizens. So that's a very important area. We have to build a learning environment, which we do have, but we have to build upon that. That it's okay to learn. It's okay to search for best practices and bring those in. We can't do what we did 20 years ago. Improve opportunities to incorporate volunteers into our new and existing programs. Again, this feeds off of the other three pillars. We can't do this work alone. As people volunteer and work with us in different ways, everybody will not coach a team or be a foster parent. They may want to contribute something, but they have to know how to reach us and how to do that. We often hear from citizens and organizations that want to help. They want to know how, and we teach that, but we want to encourage that folks to come in. Assessing existing training opportunities and propose new training needs for each division. So each division will go back and look at how we are training, how we're cross-training, and improve those practices. It's always a continuous work that we do that, but within this pillar, again, that's so important. We got to move forward with new practices and best practices in our industry. And we have departments that run from juvenile justice, which is our juvenile detention center, behavioral health, intellectual disabilities programs, social services programs such as financial assistance, and of course adult care, and the programs under child welfare. So we have a broad range of programs that Director Smith has under her umbrella. The last part, not least, is we have to have data that tells a story and assists in allocating financial and human resources to ensure that there's little waste and that we are allocating resources where they're most beneficial for our citizens and for everybody involved with the process. Data dashboards are being developed in each of the divisions, and some folks have seen those already. Those are very important. We need to have timely data that we can use and immediately, today, tomorrow, as we plan for the future as well. And so a lot of this work is underway already, but again, it's a matter of keeping it on the front burner, per se, to make sure that we don't forget that fact. So anyway, I'm going to turn things back over to Dr. Kirkland, and I appreciate your time and your support as well, because we really do appreciate the support.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, so thank you, Elizabeth, Donna, Teresa, and Al, for your passionate presentation of the 4 pillars. So now that you've heard about the 4 pillars, how do we plan to map these 4 pillars into a plan for our path forward? Well, each of the divisions and the units are going to create operational and innovative implementation plans aligning with the 4 pillars. The operational plans will be living documents and will be data-driven, as you've heard multiple times tonight, and based on evidence-based service delivery models. It's going to be reviewed for continuous quality improvement. using best practice models to measure outcomes. It's going to provide accountability through regular updates to Virginia Beach citizens, city leadership, city council, departments, services, and advisory boards. So full circle. And with that, we're going to move toward the official launch of the strategic plan, which will be Thursday, October 12th. We hope that you will join us at the Human Services Administrative Building in the front lobby. And last but not least, if you haven't seen this beautiful document, take a look at it. This is really, really a representation of the hard work that the whole team's done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Any questions or comments, folks?
Just a few comments. I'll go back to this last slide here. The one that's on number 7, I think it is. One talks about your data-driven, evidence-based. I would encourage you a couple things is when you're, and I don't know to what extent you're going to have internal dashboards, but you're going to have a dashboard like VDOT has, one that's available to the public that people can go on and see. It's an external dashboard. So you're going to have internal and an external dashboard as well?
Yes, sir.
Starting with the internal.
I'll cut that because you got to, okay, just to make sure. Secondly, you know, I like database decisions, but the key part is, I don't know if you're capturing lessons learned, but what actionable knowledge did your data generate? Because data is just data.
Right.
If you don't take any actual knowledge out of it, it isn't much of a yield. One of the things that we do in the operational forces, we have a very comprehensive of lessons learned. And I don't know if that's part of that's a different thing from just data-driven. That gets back to what do people, how do you innovate above the best practice so you're beyond that? That gets what do people learn. So I would encourage you to have a, however you want to do it, but a lessons learned place, I think very, very valuable. And I'd be interested when you get to your public dashboard, interesting to see that. And I assume you're going to have someone monitoring for, sometimes metrics can cause dysfunctional behavior. I'm sure you're well aware of the literature where that can happen. So I certainly would make sure you're watching that. But I'd really be interested in sharing with us at budget time. Something I asked about 2 budgets ago. I'm sure one of your metrics is how you better utilization of your fleet vehicles and getting in control of your transportation costs. Thank you.
Bobby?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the staff and all the volunteers that helped out with this great initiative. It is much needed. I've been involved in healthcare on and off for 41 years now. And I remember back in the 90s when I was going through grad school, I was doing home care rehab. And back in the 90s, and there were problems back then. But I just started doing it again a couple of years ago, and I can tell you, a lot of the same clients, the same districts, the same neighborhoods, far more acute problems, far more exacerbated problems. We have more of an aging population out there. We have more at-risk children out there. Back in the 90s, we weren't talking about opioids and, you know, a lot of other things. And I think a lot of folks, and quite frankly, are outliving their retirements right now. And I'm seeing more and more disabled elderly taking care of their disabled mates because they don't have the capacity to go to another facility. They have to stay in their homes. And I know in talking to Danette, you know, the exponential explosion of applications that are needed by people in the city. And we're a pretty affluent city, and you got to wonder about some of the other, you know, cities around that don't have the means that we do. You know, we do a great job, but the needs are growing every day. And the point is that I think we do a remarkable job, and we're going to have to do better because I think, if anything, the demand is going to be going up in a lot of ways between the youth and the elderly and, you know, some of the neighborhoods and everything, and, you know, the way that people live, or it's not even paycheck to paycheck for a lot of people. So I do thank you for, and applaud you for your efforts.
Other question or comments? Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you for the support.
We're out there. Wish you all the very best.
Thanks, Dana. Thanks, everybody. Teresa, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good to have you all with us.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you. All right. Now we'll go to the Veterans Care Facility outpatient clinic. This is not the one that's already been approved by the state.
Right. And the guys are setting up, and I'd just let the mayor kind of introduce this himself, since he got me all wound up with Congressman Scott Taylor, and the team's all working.
I haven't done one thing. obviously, this has been out in the works for years, folks. And I've had the opportunity to meet the director of the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, and they're talking about wanting to build this facility. And I said, well, where's the money? You know, that's the first thing I said. Because at the federal level, there's not much being funded. And to be fair, I was correct. I was quickly corrected that there is money being funded for the veterans. And as such, this is very good possibility. This is not a definite for Virginia Beach. The only thing the city would be doing at all would be providing land, and nothing more than that. And our congressman is working diligently to try to steer it this way, and there's a heck of a lot of interest for it to come this way. And I want to thank, Scott Taylor for helping, and I want to thank the staff for working diligently. And, it'd be great to have it out there somewhere near our biomed or something that just kind of feels good. We got the veterans facility that I've heard that contract has been awarded, so I imagine we'll be breaking ground on that before the end of the year, before the governor leaves. So
November 1st.
So it's already set?
First 1 o'clock.
Yeah, okay, so I figured that would happen. So I'm very excited about that. So Bob and Warren.
Bob, we assigned Bob the lead on this, and he's been supported by Warren because kind of mixes in with our biomed and all the other health sciences and health facility we got down in Princess Anne. And Bob's going to kind of describe what this project is. It differs from the Veterans Care Facility because this is really an outpatient clinic of much enlarged, to say kindly about it. But Bob will tell us where we're going, and Warren's going to jump up there and help us too with some land sightings.
Thank you, Dave. Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is a very exciting opportunity, and the mayor has been the biggest cheerleader for this. He's also, I think, from what I've heard from the senator's aides, every time they get to meet him, they get to hear about this also. So he's been working. Congress has authorized and has funded the construction of a veterans community-based outreach clinic, or a CBOC, community-based outreach clinic, a 155,000 square foot facility. It'll be close to about 170,000 square foot, but the usable space is 155,000, and that's in Southampton Roads.
What was the amount actually authorized and appropriated? There's a difference between authorized and appropriated.
The money is there. The Veterans Administration has told us they have the money.
What's the amount of the appropriation, did they say?
Yes, sir, they do. They have money on hand.
Did they say how much it is?
It's $200 and some million was the overriding bill. I don't have that right in front of me, but this was in a laundry list of facilities, and they were all about the same price. The President signed the legislation as funding is available. The VA looked at a number of options such as leasing, new construction, renovation, or contracting out. Contracting out would be they would pay Centera to build and operate the facility, and not surprising, that was the most expensive option. Authorized specifics. In order for the facility to be located in Virginia Beach, there is an expectation the jurisdiction will provide the appropriate amount of land free to the VA. We think that's 15 to 25 acres. They're requiring 1,050 parking spaces. And a disabled veteran should be a prominent partner in any successful proposal. So basically, you're looking at REITs and folks like that be able to partnership with a disabled veteran to put in a proposal. Again, 155,000 square feet at $33.90. Full-time employee equivalents is $350, and that includes the 40 employees that are currently at the small facility in Virginia Beach. Rent inflation is 2% a year. Medical and other alterations are $13 million, let's call it. And then the first year's rent is $5.2 million. And then total first year cost is $18,141, and that's the number that was appropriate. The VA is currently paying $193,000 for a 9,900 square foot building, and their lease was set to expire in November or June of this year, but the lease has been extended. And then, according to authorization, the Veterans Administration, General Services Administration will be soliciting for the lease for the new project within 12 months of the legislation being signed, And then Congressman Taylor is inquiring at our request whether the host city can collect real estate taxes and personal property taxes on the improvements. We're still waiting to get the answer there. The VA seems to assume, however, that from the information I've read, that taxes will be paid. So that's good news for us. And we've also requested information on average compensation. I would suspect this is probably running, and I'm sort of guesstimating, intelligent guess, $60,000 per job. And Virginia Beach is identifying parcels will be provided to the VA free of charge, 50-year lease, and Warren will get into that. And we also understand that our neighbor to the west has identified the site also. So we do have competition, we believe. Veterans population, there's obviously need. That's 466,000 just in Southampton roads. 150,000 are enrolled in VA facilities, and so many of them now have to go over to Hampton to the VA facility over there. And that number is expected to grow to 217,000. So this is a growth market, unfortunately, because so many veterans folks are being in the military now, and so many folks are coming out with back, neck, hip injuries. Special forces folks especially are really suffering through disability after just a few number of years serving. And, you know, they have traumatic brain injury, which was one of the things we were looking at for the biotech park, and then the other diseases folks get as they get older. Schedule, according to the VA, award the lease 26 months after authorization. That's a little different than what the legislation stated. Complete construction 32 months after lease award, and activation 6 months after construction ends. Requirements of City of Virginia Beach, 15 to 25 acre site, possibility of the city to need to extend the utilities of the site. I think that's dependent on which site we look at, and possibility of other required infrastructure improvements. And we're looking, as always, to provide a site with multiple beneficial outcomes, and Warren will get into that. And now Warren's going to talk to you about the sites.
Thank you, Bob. Warren, we welcome you.
Members of council, thank you. Yeah, we had a chance working with our SGA office to, based on the parameters and scope of the work listed in the work plan here, to potentially identify options, if you will, for us to consider siting the facility. And we went through a number of options, and we narrowed it down to basically three, at least three that rose to the top. And they're in no specific order, although we do have a preferred option, and we'll describe each one of those. But A represents along Princess Anne Road, essentially at the entrance of the biopark. B represents a site in the off of Lansdowne Road, the Bell Farm, and C here is a site off of Dam Neck Road. And let me get into a little bit of detail here. The A site, again, a site there, again, Princess Anne Road. This is the concept rendering of our biopark. It would encompass a site there at the entrance. We again took some liberties of just doing some site planning, if you will, based on the site and the requirements. This is essentially and conceptually how it could lay out. Obviously, there's some from a positive standpoint. A lot of the infrastructure there is in place. A negative, or at least a downside, if there would, it's not a part of the official branding of the park. It is not a research and development facility. It's an outpatient facility. So, although it has some merit and some potential, there is a potential of branding the park not as a park that it's intended to be, at least initially. The Lansdowne Road, again, this is the Bell property. That's again taking liberties on how it could lay on that site. Obviously, although it's a site, it does have some infrastructure costs associated with it. It also speaks against some of the work that you just heard in terms of some work that UDA is doing in terms of siting some public work facility and city assets that are proposed on that site. The third, again, if we had to pick and choose, is the Dam Neck Road site. There's a parcel here off of Dam Neck Road that fits their fiscal requirements. We think it has obviously some positives because of the fact that the infrastructure is already in place. There's some potential opportunities for additional parking. It's in very close proximity to the existing Centerra facility. That's taking, again, some liberties on potentially how the site could lay out on the property. There is also some impacts, of course, to some of the ball fields that have been proposed there for future expansion of the Princess Anne Athletic Complex. That, in a nutshell, are the sites. I know we went through that very quickly. We can certainly revisit them. This is also, something that is still dynamic. In other words, we're waiting on the official indication that this is a go. But we are prepared and have some ready-made responses prepared for going forward if it happens to come forward to the city.
Rosemary. Thank you, Rowan.
So in competition of this, is it Chesapeake, or are you hearing anything from Suffolk or any other cities?
No, ma'am, just Chesapeake. They've identified, for our understanding, is they've identified a site behind Chesapeake General Hospital, Chesapeake Regional Medical Center, whatever.
Other questions or comments, John?
One, not just to let you know, I did ask Dana just to see whether or not, because what's the definition of a hospital, and is an out-treatment medical facility the same as a hospital, just to see where it falls within the current statutory definitions and court cases that have happened recently on, there was one in Marion County which got into a facility, what its taxable status would be in light of the statute in those recent court cases. I did ask him just to, I'd appreciate being educated on where this would fall.
Well, this is going to be a public-private partnership and owned by a private company.
Well, apparently,
and obviously leased to the VA. So I'm curious too.
I do, because this case dealt with just because someone owns a facility, the use is always a factor independent of the owner. And that's why I asked him this business just to find out what that is.
What do they do with post offices, do you know?
Well, post office, it's government-owned property.
No, there's a lot of them.
I know that. You don't pay. They don't pay if they own it. If they own the land.
Even the ones that are leased?
Oh, no, you asked about lease. I don't know what they do with that.
Well, that's what we're talking
No,
about.
but difference, there's a thing about law about medical treatment facilities, independent of who owns it, use can be considered tax exempt. That's the part I've asked about. There was a lawsuit on that with Marion County, the town of Marion, and I'm just trying to understand.
So were they being taxed? Is that what you were saying?
They were tried to tax, and they sued, and they won. The Attorney General ruled in favor of the town, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the business.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to understand how it would apply in this case. I'm not saying I know the answer, I just want you to know I have asked.
Interesting to know.
And Mr. Mayor, we also checked with the Navy. This is sort of in the ITA, but the Navy was, really thought this was a good use because it's no overnight use. Basically, it's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And we developed a letter for Warren to send out to REITs, which we were told would be a good audience, the major developers in Hampton Roads, just making them aware of this opportunity with a briefing like this so they could be prepared when the GSA puts the lease out.
Yes, ma'am.
Any idea of how many jobs it would bring in?
350, ma'am, and that includes the 40 that would move from the existing facility.
$60,000 a year.
That's about a multiplier effect of 2.8.
Very good.
$60,000 job.
All right.
So that's a spin-off from that.
One more second, since Warren Harris is here, and I'll be very quick. We got a few minutes, and I don't want to hold us up, but I had our manufacturers roundtable today, and with some junior colleges there and also OPIC. I would sit back to you. I think I've shared with you all that I've been very distressed that it appears to be a substantial number of jobs out there that need the proper training to get filled, and they were not getting filled. I would sit back today and say to you, this meeting going around from Steel, IMS Gear, Bush, smaller companies, Hermes, smaller companies as well. The first question I ask, tell me about jobs opened, are they being filled, and so forth. Everyone spoke up and said, we are doing much better filling our positions than we have in the past, including Steel. Steel has had 70, 80, down to about 40. IMS here was like 7 or 8. And I would just sit back and say to you, that is a huge improvement. And I want to recognize Warren working diligently, not only just with Inc., but with our school system. I got John Moss in my office before we started to share with him some of this stuff. The schools now, our schools are going to start talking about these type of technical jobs in elementary school. Inc., through what Warren did with the school system, has come up with a grant to allow high school students to go in and do these apprenticeships, and this grant will pay for half of that salary. These things are what we really need to see happen. And another thing that I picked up on today clearly, you know how you hear job fair? Well, and they're okay, but it could be career fair. And also, young people, bring your parents with you to find out about these type of jobs, acknowledging that you go into steel, you go in IMS gear, you can eat on the floor there. These manufacturing jobs are not dirty jobs, they're technical jobs. They pay more than a daughter of mine being a school teacher, you know, and master's degree versus an associate's degree, okay? There's a big gap there, and which is great, you know, but while Warren was here, Warren has taken this on, and I want to thank you and your staff, Warren.
Yeah, thanks,
I mean, I am real, and I wanted to share, I am very excited, very encouraged as to what I saw today, because this is what this council has been talking about for years. And it's taken a while, but I really believe we got a foundation now, and I want to thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. No problem.
All right, anything else?
I just have one very quick thing.
Since I did, you did.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine, I did.
If anybody didn't see, the public library has the 3D printing machines out now, and those pieces of plastic on the table are the things that were printed out of the central library.
Great.
And the green thing that's kind of big is actually an image from Goodnight Moon, and it's somebody's trying to print a 3D
I remember that.
So, I was the only one who got that at the meeting, but the subject of being a 2-year-old. And the very last thing that I've been kind of trying to get around to tell everybody is that I am pregnant.
Oh, good for you.
So.
Congratulations.
I'm about at the very end of getting away with not telling anybody, so.
All right, that's a great way to end the meeting.
Congratulations, Jessica.
Thank you.
Congratulations.